Tonight, we're doing a bit of a podcast with Michael Offendahl, who's the publican from the Toobeah Township, and we're talking just about the native title claims that's affecting the whole of the township. Welcome, Michael.
How you going, Jim? Thanks for having us.
Good, mate. Look, I know a lot of people have concerns on native title claims, and especially like what's gone on in Western Australia recently with the now debunked Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act and how that affects people's land, like property owners' property rights. So, mate, just a bit of an introduction about yourself, Michael, who you are, mate, and tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah. So actually grew up in Toobeah. My parents bought the hotel in 1998, the Toobeah Hotel. So I was here as a kid, like sort of the only place we've got in the world. And yeah, about 2011, me and my partner, we came out here and took the hotel over. Yeah, we started just trying to get it going and modernise it and make it work with how things are now. So it's been quite a challenge for us. Just as like Toobeah is a tiny township, we don't have drinking water, we don't have sewerage. There's not really ever been any serious town planning as far as even stormwater and things go. She can be a bit backwards at times, but I bloody love it.
How many people live there, Michael?
We're in the township. We've probably got around 30 people in the township. The hotel has 23 rooms. We can fit sort of 45 people in the hotel if we have to. But the broader area, it's a big like irrigated cotton, dryland crops. There's still a few head of cattle and sheep and that about as well. It's a very prosperous part of Queensland.
Okay. Mate, can you tell us then, let's jump into this native title claim over the township. And can you just give us a bit of a background of of how it occurred and where it's up to now, just in general terms? And maybe if we can, we'll bring up the map in a minute, but just before we do that, just give us a bit of background about it.
Yeah, so 24th of January, the council's minutes came out, and that basically, from nowhere, indicated that we were going to lose 95% of our township, like just all this stuff that's sort of been here forever. So our town common, our town hall, our dump, like for example, which obviously it's all just stuff that's always existed. They obviously want to take our rodeo ground as well, where you have your campdrafts and your things like that, like your sports and rec. So all of these like pre-existing things that were in the town, all of a sudden they were just gone. Yeah, completely gone. It was pretty crazy. So I got onto this a bit earlier, just on the fact that we've had a lot of trouble trying to work out with sewerage, like to develop stuff, because you've got to expose of the effluent on the same title you make it on. So, we've been arguing the stupidity of that for best over a decade, and we've tried to buy more blocks here and there to, eventually be able to transfer treated effluent to dispose of it. So we had some blocks on the western edge of town, and during the drought, I had approval to buy 4 blocks that adjoined 2 that I'd bought as a lease and freeholded. And we just didn't have the money. It was a bit tough at the time. Everyone was struggling a fair bit, so I just bought one of those blocks, and I was obviously assumed, being the only adjoining landholder, I'd come back and grab them at a later date and hopefully be able to sort of sort out our effluent disposal issues and that. So I applied for those blocks, I don't know, a couple of years ago through DNRM, and they basically said to me, "Oh, it's not probably a good time to do that." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's odd, considering I already had approval to do it." And I said, would it be rude if I asked why? And they sort of said, "We can't tell you." And I was like, "Oh, righto, this is odd."
Really?
So anyway, I obviously just kept working at that, and it ended up being that a stock route was being defined. It was going to come through the only 3 vacant blocks left in the township that were on the original title. So and I was like, "Oh, well, this isn't ideal. Surely there's a better way." There's a lot of surplus land around this town. There's obviously, probably 540 acres of what they'd call a reserve, and considerable amount more of stock root and that. I thought surely we could have a better way of doing this. But yeah, the negotiation side of that just didn't exist. And every time we'd try and get somewhere with it, people just wouldn't talk. So I just kept hounding them and hounding them and hounding them until people started to break and give me bits and pieces of information. And inevitably, I never was told what was happening, but I got the gist that it wasn't going to be good. Like some of the councillors sort of alluded to things that might, like basically access to the creek for people to go swimming and fishing was a pretty easy way to work out what was happening. Like if we weren't going to be able to do that in any future plan, then that was obviously going to be a bit of a problem, as that's all we've got in this town. So we got to that point with that meeting. Those minutes have come out, and I'm like, wow, this isn't great. And obviously, other people that I'd sent it to, just like landholders and stuff in the area, have come and said, talk me through it even more.
Minutes?
Yeah, the council minutes.
Sorry, Michael, was that the council minutes?
Yeah, the council minutes from January 24. So that's the first the public knew about this, like officially knew anything was happening, but obviously also the gravity of what was happening. So in those minutes, essentially, the council said that everything that existed doesn't exist. And that was literally their the way they went with it. So they said, the Toobeah common, for example, which most towns have a common, people can put a horse in that common. You pay your little fee and away you go. Like it's referred to as the Toobeah common. I went and put some horses in there after the minutes came out, just to make sure that they knew it was the Toobeah common. They took my money and the horses are there. So it's like, you're sort of sitting there saying this doesn't exist, but how these horses get in there and how'd you take the money? Like, it was just comical. And the stuff with the hall and, things like that. Like, all we've ever tried to do, and my family here, is grow this town and make it better. Like, we don't have anywhere else to go in the world. I can't go back to Norway. They're not going to have me. Like, it's just, this is it. So we just assumed this was our home forever, and that's sort of what we want to do. But for the council to sort of do that in the way they did, like there's an application, they've supported that application unanimously, like the 6 councils and the mayor, and they knew that the community wasn't consulted when they did that, and they said, well, we can't consult the community because there's a privacy clause around business dealings of this nature.
And is that the problem there, Michael, just on that council, like, because it's a state-run thing, the Aboriginal Land Act, isn't it, and the native title, like, they call the shots, don't they, in reality?
Well, that's what the council tried to say, but the legislation actually uses the council as a buffer to protect the township. So they take, for example, the council's opinion on everything quite seriously. So all of the things in question are held in trust to the people by the council. So there was never a reason that any of that was up for debate. It just, the council simply had to say, well, no, this is what that is. We don't accept that's how this is going to be. Our council didn't do that. And then they actively worked to put down any dissent to their decisions. So, obviously they knew I was going to kick off. And as I made a few friends along the way, and people would ask questions, and they basically just went in with, this is the best deal we could do. We had no deal. Look, we've come out with this little bit of freehold land for future development for the town, which is, it's bugger all. You should be so happy because you could have got nothing because the state government could do this at any time. So I was like, well, I don't reckon that could be right. So I obviously got on the resources department. I talked to a lady there, and that I was put onto by the Scott Shaw, the minister's office. It turns out I'd actually been talking to this lady for 2 years about those blocks of land I mentioned before that I was trying to freehold. So I was like, this is pretty convenient. I actually know this chick. So we were, talking about it, and I was saying, just trying to sort of get her in how it was for me. Like I said, this is my home. That's my creek. I swam in that as a kid. My kids swim in it. Everyone uses this, and you're saying that we can't use it anymore. You're literally saying that, and a corporation 450 kilometres away is going to control that. So the Bigginbull Aboriginal Corporation's based in Brisbane. None of the Bigginbull people live in our town at all, like literally none at all. Anyone that ever did sold their house and left. So that was a bit of an issue for us there, and the council working though to try and sort of anyone that put their hand up and said, look, this I don't think this is right, and to really shoot them down and tell them, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, yeah, Michael's an idiot, Michael's this, Michael's that. Well, it's like, not really. Like, just read the frigging information that's here in front of you. So now the council's got a website page dedicated to Toobeah with all of the correspondence between them and the resources department. And, obviously what they said at the start and the reality of where we are now is completely different.
So, mate, can we just bring up that map and maybe we could just get some idea of the implications of that? Well, there's a map of the township. Can you just step us through what's going to be, I guess, taken from the township, Michael, and what you had access to before, and you won't after this?
Yeah, right. Well, if you start with lot 10, so that's part of the rodeo ground. That's obviously where we store cattle for camp drafts, and normally have a 2 to 3 day camp draft and things like that. So I can't even understand how that was given or potentially to be given in the first place. The stock routes, it's a crazy concept that it takes more importance than the actual township. Like I said earlier, we can't even drink the water. There's no provision in this map for us to have anywhere to put sewage at some point or processed drinking water, things like that. The proposed ALA area includes all of our recreational area. So anywhere someone might walk a dog, ride a horse, go for a swim, go fishing, that's all gone. The common is to the right-hand side of that lot 1, and it runs from the top right corner to the bottom right corner, and encompasses a good section of that. And it's a defined thing. And obviously, if you look there at that blue bit where it says potential future development, most of that's a swamp. So it's not really.
So that's what they were going to give you. That's what they were going to give you for further expansion.
Yeah, so the majority of that's a bit of a swamp, really, and you'll see that proposed stock route actually takes out our town hall. And as I've mentioned, we've got issues with sewage, not having drinking water or anywhere to do that. And our dump, which is part of that stock route, it's a little square there in the centre, just off the left-hand edge of the town. We could do that there right now. Obviously, that's not the best spot. You'd want that further away, which you would assume if you've got 540 acres vacant around your town, you would be able to put that somewhere you wanted. But the forward thought from the council, though, part of the legislation is they actually have to account for the town's growth now, what it needs and this and that. So clearly, as we've just said, we can't even drink the friggin' water. They haven't done that, and it's just really disappointing, eh?
So where does your water come from now? What's your water supply for the town now?
So we've got water from the creek, which is up in the sort of centre of the lot 1, and then we've got a bore over near the kindergarten, which is the kindergarten sort of the bottom right of the stock route there, which is part of that Hall Reserve areas there. Okay. So so we've got the river water because bore water is too hard for your grass and your animals. It'll end up hurting them a bit. So we rerun both waters here, and then obviously we drink rainwater if it rains.
Yeah, right. So what are the implications then? So if this looks like it's going to go through, it's not through yet, but what are the community implications and the implications on yourself as the publican in town? If you're not guaranteed that you can access these areas anymore once it's transferred.
Oh, they're expecting our kids to do individual access agreements with the Biggamble Aboriginal Corporation to use the creek. So that's where we are. I just can't believe that was even said.
And even where, say, you have your camping grounds, where you used to own camp drafts and all that, so that's not guaranteed anymore, that use of that? You would have to get an agreement?
No, it's not guaranteed at all. And council suggested to us that the rest of that rodeo area could also be taken at a later date. So what we're actually dealing with here is there was two claims to this. One started in 2016, and that encompassed that Hall Reserve area in the kindergarten. And I think sort of the what would be known as Lot 9, which is the other half of that rodeo ground, which is the bit to the right that's not coloured.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, that initial application apparently also included our bore. So that somehow was sort of dropped, and then this new one came up, which was significantly bigger. So I think sort of how these Aboriginal corporations work with this kind of thing is they come in, go after things that are quite, important to the town, and then hope that she'll settle for something far bigger. So, like, there's a benefit to that 540 acres of reserve. I'm sure there's a three-phase power line right up it and bitumen access off the side. Obviously, they've got some plans there that are significant, but I don't see how that trumps like our actual life and our property rights. We've invested in these titles for generations, and they're just throwing it away overnight without even any consultation or talking to us. Nobody's asked us what we thought about this or whether it's a good thing. Nobody here's got an issue with the Biggenbull people or any Aboriginal people for that fact. It's just this particular way of going about freehold, like Aboriginal land for economic gain, when it affects a township, it's pretty wild. Like, I just don't understand how that happens. And it's very complicated legislation, but if you sort of get into it, it would appear that the council is the buffer to stop this happening. So the council's support of this application is essentially the community consulted, which is what we were told at the start by the Resources Department. They said, we don't think the Gundawindi Regional
So you think it's
Council
a
completely
failure?
appreciates the process.
Yeah. Do you think it's like the Aboriginal Land Act needs to be changed so there's more open and accountable consultation, and they can't just say rely on the council that they've actually, the minister's got to get out, because there's nothing in the legislation saying they have to actually consult with the townspeople, is there?
No, not really. Like, they're just using the council as the consultation, but it's a bit of it's a funny area. But like we were told by the Resource Department, things like this never go through without community support. So if the council's supporting the application and the state, like the Resources Department, is considering the council's support, the community support, well, that is a bit of a problem if the community doesn't know anything about it. So the council signed that application. They've listed as one of the risks of signing it that, we want the state government to further consult the community, but we know they've got no obligation to do so. And the reason they don't have an obligation to do so is because they consider you signing the application, the community consulted. That's exactly what we were told by the Resources Department on the first day of the war.
Yeah, right. And so have you organised community meetings to talk about this issue? Has there been many meetings amongst the community just to say, look, what's going on? What should we do?
Oh, massive. Yeah, massive meetings. So we weren't even going to be heard or listened to. Like, they planned this operation beforehand, essentially assuming the only person that was going to be angered by it was me. And like Mr. Springborg, our mayor, who's also the state LNP president, actually called me up and he asked me to endorse him for mayor 2 weeks before he pulled this crap on us. So, yeah, it was very premeditated. They just didn't really appreciate our community. They obviously didn't respect that we do love our town, and this area is a lot bigger than just the 33 titles that are in the township. Like, yeah.
And it's a centre place, it's a meeting place, isn't it, mate? Where you have camp drafts, people come to the pub on the for
it's massive, mate. It's a
more,
big area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wealthy. There's a lot of money
culture,
out here, a lot of work. It's a good spot, and this township is just so important to that. Like, we need to grow this township just to support agriculture. Like, most other communities are screaming for tourism, they're screaming for this and that. We've got the works here. We just don't have the housing. We don't have the ability to do that. Like, we need to be able to create jobs for the partners that don't work in agriculture, for example. So for farms being able to have housing in Toobeah where one partner can drive out to the farm to work and the other one can drive to Gundawindi to work there. The kids can go to school, there's doctors, there's shopping. Like, it's such a good thing for that. And we've been trying for, a long time to get any sense there. And every time we've ever came up with a proposition or an idea, which just thrown in the bin, we just get laughed at. Like, what would you know?
Yeah.
You guys are from Toobeah. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Is it, do you feel like there, Michael, that your community hasn't got a voice either with council and the state government? Like you're
Oh, massively. Like,
voiceless?
what's destroyed us is sort of two factors. Like, the Gundawindi Regional Council doesn't do zonal representation for councillors. So we've got 6 councillors and a mayor, and they're all from Gundawindi. Like, that's
So no
not
divisional.
ideal. No, no. And considering like the size of the Shire, that's probably pretty ordinary. And then, like I said, mentioned before, our mayor, Lawrence Springborg, who's also the president of the Queensland LNP, he's the guy that also took the National Party away from Queensland. So he decided to join the LNP and the Nationals together, and wasn't that brilliant. So now when we have an issue like this, we have no one we can talk to. So historically, you'd hope the National Party might have gone, oh, this is a bit wild. Let's help these guys out. But it's just, yeah, we can't even get our local member, James Lister, to say a single thing in support of us. It's really, really disappointing.
So you have contacted your local, your state member and your federal member too as well? What's happening?
Oh, massively, yeah. So federal member David Littleproud has given us a bit of a statement of sorts. Like, he sent emails to the resources department, but nothing official, which is what it needed. Like, we're not having a go at Aboriginal freehold and the Aboriginal Land Act. We're just simply saying, I think in this instance, when it affects a township, perhaps there's a better way of doing it. Because, like, imagine if every town in Queensland has to go through what our little community has, and inevitably they will. Every town's surrounded by USL, like unallocated state land, like we are. They all have a reserve. They all have a common. They've all got their recreational areas. They're all going to suffer from this. Once the precedent's set in Toobeah, yeah, it'll just flow on. It'll be a very easy thing to do. So we thought the Queensland LNP might have just gone, oh, righto, let's help these guys out. And yeah, to date, no, we've had some success with senators and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Okay. Have you had any success, Michael, just reaching out to the minister who's responsible for it? Which minister is responsible?
Scott Shaw, I think it is. No, not really. Like, he's answering questions. So now we're just in a bit of a tunnel of sorts where they're just throwing crap at each other from one side to the other, and no one wants to take ownership of the problem. So, like, for us as a community, we're just sitting down, this isn't even our issue. Like, the legislation's obviously just needs to be amended or corrected here to protect townships. Why can't we have that conversation? Like, really, our council should have gone to the state government openly at the start of this and publicly if they had to, and say, look, we've got a lot of towns like Toobeah in our Shire, and I don't think this is going to work for us. But they chose not to do that. They chose to go down the road of, well, they'll shut up eventually, and let's just do it, and it's done, and that's it. And yeah, it just sets a bad example, especially coming from a person of like Lawrence Springborg's stature, like to be someone that thought they'd be the premier of the state, to then just fail so miserably, like in a situation like this.
Do you think so? And that's a good point that you raised about, you're not against the Aboriginal Land Act or native title per se, but it's the way it's rolled out where it affects a township and a community like this and key community assets. You want that tweaked, because the way the Aboriginal Land Act now, they don't have to tell you. They can just relate that through the council. The community is locked out of any decision making.
Well, they are essentially, as far as the council talks. But if you listen to some of the correspondence from the resources department, it does seem to indicate that the council probably sort of was representing our interests. So, making that little effort to get a small amount of freehold land for future development, they felt that was sufficient. Obviously, not being concerned about the fact that there's not enough land in this town now to get rid of the sewage for the pre-existing freehold titles here, and we're going to add some more. Like, it's just, it's really bad. It's probably more lazy than it is bad, but yeah, we've asked the council to pull their support for this application, and they're still refusing to do it. But yeah, if you go through the correspondence online, like there's every reason there they should, and I just can't quite understand why they're not.
I think it's an interesting comment you said that this has got implications for a lot of other townships in Queensland, and when you look to what's happening in Redlands Council area near any city, just to the east of Brisbane there, that there's native title claims over a lot of the parks.
Yeah.
Parks. So that's I guess another indication and another, I guess, impact of what's happening. And I know there's stuff up near the small town of Poona, just north of Tin Can Bay, with native title claims in the front of houses on the foreshore. So again, all these things that are really directly affect communities and closely settled areas. The legislation needs to be changed, mate, doesn't it? So you, as a community, have more input into the decision, and you don't just find out last, and you've got no real input.
The only people benefiting from this are solicitors. In all honesty, is like this corporation we're dealing with has claims to have 800 people that are of Bigambul descent, one way or another. They spent $660,000 last year on legal fees. Well, that's enough to buy a deposit for 25 houses for a young Bigambul person.
Yeah.
It's just such a waste, and it's really is silly. It's just going to create further division, but it doesn't help anybody. Like the whole purpose of this freehold Aboriginal land is economic gain through this, and there's some other reasons, like they suggest that it can be subdivided and Aboriginal people will be able to build a house, etc. Why on earth would you want to force somebody to build a house in a town where there's not enough like employment for necessarily what they're doing? There's no education opportunities for that kind of stuff. Like, is there not a better way of doing this where you actually went and talked to actual Aboriginal people that live in the bush and say, what would you like, guys? Because I don't know any of them that would think this is a great idea. This isn't going to help them. And they 100% do need help. Wasting $660,000 a year on solicitors is definitely not doing anything for anybody. It's crazy.
Mate, where to here for the community, the township of Toobeah? What's your plan of action from here?
We're working to obviously have this halted, so we still don't even know if we pulled this up. We're looking at avenues with obviously legal representation now as a community through our progress group and some other community groups. But yeah, we're hoping that just the state government might come out, inevitably, not the resources department, somebody else might just come out and have a look at the problem and talk to us and go, yeah, you know what, there probably is a better way to do this. And there's better ways to give Aboriginal people economic gains, like without sort of destroying other people's lives and, pasts and futures. That's what we're hoping.
Do you think, just back to the impacts before we close, like, are people like visually upset? Are they just really worried about the impact on this on the township and on the area? Can you explain just some of the feeling and sentiment there in town and surrounding?
Well, we've never had more than 8 people to a meeting for anything in Toobeah, and when we got the council to actually have a meeting, we had 150 people turn up. So that was very unexpected for the council to see that kind of reaction. Obviously, was also unexpected for the state government. I haven't actually talked to anybody that supports this idea or concept.
Well, look, mate, thanks for coming along tonight and letting us know. I think it's, most Australians would see this as a bureaucratic process that, I guess, fails to capture, I guess, the concerns of the local community. And really, the rural people in this country are sick of not being listened to and forgotten. There's a lot of other issues that we're on the back end. And look, it's about time rural people stood up and be counted, mate, because otherwise our heritage and our, our lifestyles are going to evaporate before our eyes.
100%. If I had any advice for any other shire that was going through this problem, it is if your local council doesn't tell the state government it's an issue and doesn't actually fight, to put that forward for you, well, you're not going anywhere. Like, you're in a bad position. So hopefully for anyone else that finds themselves at the end of this, they can, work with their council proactively from the start. But I think there's a lot in this, and I think we can get some good changes here once we get some rational people involved.
All right. Oh, well, that's good, mate. Look, thanks for your time, and we'll be following it closely from a Property Rights Australia point of view. And best of luck, and please reach out, mate, if you want to speak to us again in future.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim.